Many people that move to Connecticut aren't prepared for the Connecticut nightlife. And by nightlife, I don't mean going out to restaurants and bars and nightclubs. Let me clue you in on what it's really about. Hi, I'm Stacy Olson with the Valentini team at William Raveis Real Estate. And on my channel, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about living on the Connecticut coast. So what is this nightlife I'm alluding to? Let's get started. So first off, it is super dark here at night. I can't tell you how many people that come up to Connecticut at night tell me that they are flabbergasted that we don't have street lights. I know, it sounds silly, but it's true. If you live in the city in Connecticut, yes, there's going to be street lights. But once you kind of get beyond that area, it is pitch black. The roads are narrow, and there's lots of twists and turns, and it's just super dark. And another thing we don't really have that really doesn't have to do with the night, but I wanted to mention is you don't really have sidewalks either. So people think they're going to move into a neighborhood, they're going to be walking their dogs, it's going to be like, in the movies, but it's really not. Again, if you're living outside the city, there are really not any sidewalks anywhere in the more rural parts of Connecticut. Another thing you have to get used to are that the critters come out at night. I know. I had friends visiting from California, and we went outside at night, and they could not believe all of the strange noises they were hearing. Yes, it's true. If you live here, you know what I'm talking about. I remember growing up as a kid, and we lived in the woods, and I remember hearing all the crickets. It'd be like, ee, 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 and you would listen to the pattern all night long. And then when you didn't hear that one that responded to the other one, it would drive you crazy. But seriously, you hear so many noises outside. And we also have, in the spring, there's these frogs called peepers. And literally you hear them when you drive by like a swampy area or a pond. It's like beep, 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 and they're really loud, and people that aren't from here aren't used to that. And another thing that comes out at night are all of the wildlife. And believe me, we run the gamut of wildlife in Connecticut. And many of the animals are nocturnal, so they're out at night. So, we have skunk, possum, raccoons, bobcats, bears, coyotes, and all sorts of strange noises in the woods. And, a lot of them just come out at night. Like I remember hearing the coyotes. Sometimes you hear them like screaming at night, and it can be really chilling because the noise is terrifying sometimes. And, we have other animals too, like, woodchuck and deer and things like that. And typically they're not out at night. But there are a lot of animals out at night. So especially when you're driving, you have to kind of be aware because they can dart out into the road in front of you. One great thing about living in the dark in Connecticut is that it's great stargazing. I can't tell you how many times as like a teenager, like I would go out with my friends and we would literally just lay out and watch the stars. It's amazing. And especially like the further you get from the city, it's like this huge open sky because it is dark and you see all sorts of things. You see, shooting stars. And actually, like more recently, we've been watching the International Space Station go by, and it's pretty cool. And I don't know if you're living in more of a city situation, if you can see things like that. Speaking of being a teenager, I know for myself and all my friends growing up in a more country area of Connecticut, we party in the woods. I know, it must sound so silly to people moving here from another area, but it's true. Yes, occasionally you have a house party, but generally people are out in the woods, and that's where kids congregate because you can't be hanging out at the mall or in the parking lot of the supermarket all the time because you'll get in trouble with the police, right, for loitering. So the kids trek into these backwoods areas, and that's pretty much where they'll hang out all night long. So it's nighttime in Connecticut, you're hanging out with your friends, and you realize you ran out of beer. And until about 10 years ago, we had something that's known as the blue laws. And not only could you not buy beer after 9 p.m., but we didn't sell alcohol on Sundays at all. So if you were going to have a party on a Sunday, let's say, you had to prepare well in advance and buy all of your alcohol a day or two before, because Sunday, it's what you got, right? Like you run out, that's it. But then in 2012, they actually reversed that. So now you can buy alcohol on Sundays. And then a few years after that, in 2015, they actually extended the time at which you can buy alcohol. So it used to be you couldn't buy alcohol after 9 p.m., but now they've extended it to 10 p.m. So it's not quite like our neighboring, state of New York, where you can pretty much buy alcohol 24/7, but it is better than it used to be. And kind of along that path, you can only buy like a liquor, beer, and wine in a package store or a liquor store, because grocery stores are limited to only selling beer. I know, it seems so silly, but it's true. You cannot buy wine or liquor in a supermarket here. I remember traveling out west once, and I went into I forget what it was, a Ralph's or something supermarket. And literally they have like 2 whole aisles dedicated to liquor and wine. And it just blew my mind. Like I couldn't believe it. Because here they're so restrictive. It is literally beer only in supermarkets and convenience stores. If you want anything else, you have to go to the liquor store or the packy. Another thing you have to be aware of in Connecticut at night is that even after COVID and all these restaurants offering delivery and things like that, there are still plenty of towns where it's like near impossible to get delivery. Yes, even with Uber Eats and DoorDash, there are areas where they just don't service. I moved from a town a couple years ago where really DoorDash was your only option if you didn't want to just physically go and pick it up yourself. And I'm sure there are towns that are even smaller than that just don't even offer it at all. So if you're coming from an area where that is something that you use regularly, you need to think about these things, because in Connecticut and a lot of areas, it's just not offered. So on a creepier note for Connecticut nightlife, Connecticut is really one of the more haunted states. It's been around for a really long time, right? It was one of the original 13 colonies. So we have a lot of old buildings and old cemeteries here in Connecticut. So just to kind of give you a taste, you know those movies, The Conjuring, where they follow Ed and Lorraine Warren and they're doing all these scary, terrible things with exorcisms and all that stuff? They were from Connecticut. They lived in Monroe, which is not very far from where I live right now. And, rumor has it they actually have that Annabelle doll in their house. So I don't even like to think about it. So some of the more well-known haunted areas in Connecticut, one of them is called Dudleytown, and in the northwest corner of Connecticut. But even the Warrens went there, and they were do not go there. It is cursed. It's supposed to be really just creepy, and people have seen things there, and no wildlife really grows there. There's no animals. It's just super creepy. Another one is the Sterling Opera House right here in Derby. They said that is haunted by the previous owner. And quite honestly, TV's Ghost Hunters went there and did a whole episode on it, which is pretty cool. Also locally, there's Fairfield Hills in Newtown. That used to be a psychiatric ward years ago that was shut down. But they say, people were treated very poorly, and there's a bunch of lost souls that wander around those old buildings that are still standing. So it's I don't like thinking about it, but it's true. Connecticut has a lot of ghostly history here. So do you think you can handle Connecticut's nightlife? It is something to get used to when you first move here. But if you think you want to live in a more suburban area where there are streetlights and sidewalks and not as many creepy crawlies, there's plenty of areas to look at. One of my favorites is Milford. Check out this video and see why I think it's a great place to live.